The storm had been howling outside for hours, wind lashing against the windows and snow piling up like soft white walls. Inside, I was trying to keep our small fire alive, wrapping my son Ethan in a blanket that barely held warmth. He was only 8, small for his age, but his heart was bigger than anyone I knew. That night, while the world outside froze, fate decided to test the warmth of our souls. Around 9 p.m., there was a knock on the door, faint and weak. My husband and I exchanged worried glances. No one sane would be out in that storm. When I opened the door, the cold air hit me like knives, and there stood a boy, no older than 12, shivering, drenched, and barefoot. His lips were blue, and he could barely whisper, "Please, just a little food." Without thinking, I pulled him inside. My mother-in-law, who was sitting by the fire knitting, gasped like I had committed a crime. "What are you doing?" she shrieked. "You don't bring strangers in during a storm. He could be a thief." But all I saw was a child, hungry, scared, and freezing. I told her he was just a boy, but she wouldn't listen. My husband stayed quiet, torn between helping the boy and pleasing his mother. Ethan, though, didn't hesitate. He ran to the kitchen, grabbed his own small bowl of soup, and handed it to the boy. "You can have mine," he said softly. That simple act made my heart ache with pride. The boy's hands trembled as he took the bowl, sipping it slowly, tears mixing with the steam. My mother-in-law stood up, pointing at him like he was a stray dog. "You don't know where he's from. He could bring trouble. Throw him out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband tried to calm her, but she was relentless. "We don't help beggars," she spat. "Not in my house." I told her I'd take responsibility, that I couldn't let a child freeze to death outside. That was the moment she snapped. "Then you and your precious son can leave with him," she said coldly. I thought she was bluffing, but she meant it. She opened the front door wide, letting the storm rush in, and screamed, "Get out if you care so much." I looked at my husband, hoping he'd stop her, but he just looked down at the floor. My heart broke. I wrapped Ethan in another blanket, took the boy's hand, and we stepped out into the blizzard. The cold bit through my coat instantly, snow stinging my face. Behind us, the door slammed shut. The world was silent except for the wind and Ethan's small voice asking if Grandma was mad. I didn't know what to say. We found an abandoned shed down the road, just enough to block the wind. I huddled the two boys together and wrapped them in every piece of cloth I had. Ethan whispered to the other boy, asking his name. "Liam," he said weakly. He'd been lost for 2 days after his mother collapsed on the roadside. They'd been walking, trying to find shelter, but she never woke up. My chest tightened. I stroked his hair, promising he was safe now. Through the night, I kept the boys close, my body trembling from the cold. Every hour, I checked to make sure they were still breathing. The storm finally began to ease at dawn, the sky turning pale gray. My husband came searching for us, guilt written all over his face. He brought a blanket and whispered that his mother had gone too far. He wanted us to come home, but I couldn't. I looked at the boy sleeping on my lap and said, "This is home now, wherever kindness lives." We took Liam to the local shelter the next day, where he got medical care and food. The staff said he'd make a full recovery. They thanked me for saving him, but I didn't feel like a hero. I was just a mother who couldn't watch another child suffer. When Ethan woke up that morning, he looked at me with sleepy eyes and asked, "Mom, was I bad for giving my food?" I held his face and whispered, "No, sweetheart. You were the only one who was good." My husband's eyes filled with tears. He finally saw what I meant the night before, that compassion isn't weakness, it's strength. Months later, my mother-in-law came to visit, bringing a small gift for Ethan. She didn't apologize, but she couldn't look me in the eye. When Liam visited us again, clean and smiling, she froze. He thanked her for letting us help him that night. She looked away, silent, as if realizing how cruel she'd been. That winter changed everything. My husband stood up to his mother more, our home became warmer, not just with fire, but with love. And Ethan, every night before bed, said a small prayer for anyone hungry or cold. I learned something too, that sometimes, doing what's right will cost you comfort, family, and peace for a while. But when I saw that boy alive and smiling, and my son proud of his kindness, I knew I'd made the right choice. Because no storm outside could ever be worse than the coldness of a heart that refuses to help. The morning after the storm, the world looked like it had been washed in white silence. Snow covered every roof, every path, and even the pain of the night before seemed hidden beneath its softness. But inside me, nothing was calm. My son Ethan hadn't spoken much since we left my mother-in-law's house. His small hands clung to mine as we sat near the shelter's weak fire. The boy we'd rescued, Liam, was resting under a blanket nearby. He was breathing better now, his cheeks no longer ghostly pale. Yet, my heart was still broken from what had happened. I could not forget how easily my family had turned us out into the cold, all because we chose kindness. Ethan finally looked up at me, his big brown eyes filled with something I couldn't quite describe, confusion, hurt, and guilt all mixed together. His voice was soft when he asked, "Was I bad, Mom?" The words hit me harder than the wind ever could. I froze for a moment, my throat tightening. I hugged him so tightly that he squirmed. "No, my love," I whispered. "You were good, better than any of us." But he shook his head. "Grandma said I shouldn't help strangers. She said good people listen." I didn't listen. I looked at him and felt tears sting my eyes. What kind of world teaches a child to doubt his kindness? I told him the truth. "Ethan, sometimes people forget what good really means. Being good isn't about obeying fear. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard." He blinked, thinking deeply, then whispered, "So Grandma was wrong." I nodded slowly. Yes, she was. And so was everyone who stayed quiet. The storm outside had taken our warmth, but my son's question took something deeper from me. It made me realize how fragile goodness is when surrounded by cruelty pretending to be wisdom. That night, while Ethan slept, I stayed awake watching Liam breathe. He'd told me earlier that his mother never woke up in the snow. I didn't know where her body was, but I promised him I'd find out. The thought of that boy wandering alone while families like ours sat by fires made me sick. The next morning, I went back to my mother-in-law's house. The snow was piled high against the porch. When she opened the door, her expression was cold, but not as cold as her words. "You're back already. Did your little charity case die?" she said. I wanted to scream, but instead, I asked for blankets and food for the shelter. She laughed. "You think I'm giving my food away? You've lost your mind." I stood taller than I ever had before. "No," I said calmly. "I finally found it." My husband came out behind her, his face pale. He said nothing at first, but when I turned to leave, he called out, "Wait." He handed me a heavy bag filled with canned food, bread, and water. His eyes met mine, full of guilt. "I should have stood with you," he said. "You were right." My mother-in-law hissed behind him, but he didn't turn around. For the first time, he chose kindness over comfort. Back at the shelter, Liam's eyes lit up when he saw the food. He whispered thank you over and over, clutching the warm bread like it was treasure. I sat beside him and felt peace for the first time in days. Later, the shelter volunteers helped locate his mother's body. They gave her a small, quiet burial, and Liam asked me to come. We stood together under the gray sky, snow falling lightly, and he said, "She always told me people would help." "I didn't believe her until you opened your door." His words carved themselves into my heart. I realized then that sometimes a single act of kindness becomes a memory someone carries forever. When we returned home weeks later, Ethan seemed lighter. One night, he drew a picture of our family by a fire, with another small boy beside us. "That's Liam," he said proudly. "He's part of our family now." I smiled, though I knew my mother-in-law would never accept that. Still, love doesn't need permission to grow. Months later, Liam was adopted by a kind couple from the city. He visited often, running straight into Ethan's arms every time. My husband built a small shed behind our house and said it would always be open for anyone needing warmth. When my mother-in-law saw it, she muttered something about us being foolish, but I caught her one evening sneaking blankets into it during another storm. I didn't say anything. Change doesn't come with words, it comes with moments that melt even the coldest hearts. That night, as the wind howled again, Ethan crawled into my lap and asked, "Mom, do you think Grandma's good now?" I smiled softly. "She's learning," I said. Sometimes, people forget what love means until they see it. He rested his head on my chest, whispering, "I hope no kid ever gets cold again." I looked out the window at the snow and whispered back, "Not while we're here." The storm may have thrown us out once, but it also showed us who we truly were. My family's cruelty had broken something, but it also built something new, a promise that no child would ever be left in the cold again, not while my heart still beat.